Welcome back to another edition of the Interlake Sports Now. If I seem a little pumped up, it's because, wow, still got the adrenaline pumping from that Grizzly playoff comeback win over SEMO. You better bet we are going to get to that game today. Going to be breaking that one down a little bit later, recapping the game a little bit, give some of my takeaways. We're also going to be talking about the Bobcats, who now know they're going to be playing Weber State in their upcoming home playoff matchup. Weber State is a tough matchup, so we're going to definitely dive into that a little bit. Plus, as always, we're going to get to our prep players of the week and dive in to some local headlines. Before we get to that, today's episode is brought to you by Nomad, voted the Flathead's best manufacturer. Nomad is a longtime supporter of the local community and sports scene, celebrating 20 years of building great careers and mission-focused custom vehicles. Nomad, a Montana-based company making a global impact. Visit nomadgcs.com for more info. That's nomadgcs.com for more info. All right, quick reminder, you can subscribe to the Daily Interlake e-edition to get all your local news right at your fingertips. Check out theDailyInterlake.com for more information. All right, let's get into the headlines real quick. We'll talk some prep action, our prep players of the week, and then we'll get into some Cat Griz action. So a lot of stuff going on. As far as the headlines, real quick, we will mention one Griz headline. For anybody who missed it, the Griz had a comeback for the ages Saturday versus SEMO, Southeast Missouri. And we're going to dive into that game later, like I said. We want to get into those headlines. The one Griz note we will mention real quick to start. So some news from the Griz. Beside the historic comeback, we had two other historic feats accomplished, individual feats, but it always comes back to the team, the foundation, set the tone. But hey, some individual accomplishments we got to represent here. Two Griz players had historic days when it comes to the record books. Return specialist Malik Flowers had a second-half touchdown return that sparked the comeback, and he also tied current New Orleans Saint Rashid Shaheed for a piece of the FCS record for most career kick return touchdowns with 7. So, historic day for Flowers. And Robbie Houck, he needed 15 tackles coming into that game to break the Big Sky all-time tackle mark of 473 tackles set by Ronnie Hamlin of Eastern Washington. And Houck did just that. He landed 15 tackles, broke the record, sealed his name in the Big Sky record books. Special day for the Grizzlies on top of the historic comeback. And like I said, congratulations to both athletes. And also, hey, their teammates deserve a lot of credit too. It just shows the foundation and the type of program the Grizzlies have to put players in a position to thrive and get individual accolades like that. So great to see it. All right, so let's start out with another college football headline related to the local sports scene. We had a headline here related to some former Valley athletes who are still playing at the college level in the Frontier Conference. So Valley Gritters named to the All-Frontier Conference team. The Frontier Conference releases its football all-conference teams, and Blake Counts, Ben Windauer, and the Montana Tech team carried the day. In voting by league coaches, the Ore Diggers had a Frontier best 8 first-team selections, 3 on offense and defense, along with 2 from special teams. The second-team honorees included 3 from Tech's offense and 1 from both its defense and special teams. The 13 total honorees also led the league. Counts, a 5'11" junior running back, finished the season with 803 rushing yards and averaged 5.5 yards per carry. He reached a century mark 4 times, including his last 3 games, and scored 6 of his 9 touchdowns on the ground. The Flathead High product, Counts that is, Flathead High product. He played for Montana Tech coach Kyle Sampson in high school and is making his first appearance on the first team after being selected. Second team all-conference the past 2 seasons. Windauer, junior linebacker of Columbia Falls, received the defensive second-team nod for Tech. He was 4th on the Ore Diggers with 55 tackles and also had 1.5 sacks, 4.5 tackles for loss, a fumble recovery, and an interception this fall. So credit to both those athletes for keeping it going at the next level, representing the Valley well, and ultimately leaving it all on the gridiron and having a good time, most likely. So good for those kids, proud of them, and yeah, keep it going. That's what it's all about right there. Just success on the field. All right, so let's jump from some former Valley athletes and their success in the college levels to some current Valley high school athletes who are making commitments to keep their journey going at the next level. Starting out with Flathead Bravettes senior Maddy Moy, a 3-head starter for the Flathead girls basketball team, signed a letter of intent to play for Montana Western. So impressive for the Flathead High athlete. The 5'9" guard was Flathead's leading scorer through the 2021-22 season, averaging 9.3 points a game. She also averaged 2.2 steals and a team-high 2.3 assists per game for the Bravettes, who went 19-6 and claimed third at the state AA tournament in Billings. Next up from the Interlake, Polson quarterback Jarrett Wilson is going to be an ore digger after announcing Sunday on Twitter that he is committed to play football at Montana Tech. Jarrett Wilson was a lot of fun to watch this year. I went on and on about him all year. Exciting kid. Here's a quote from Wilson. "I'm excited to announce my commitment to Montana Tech. Can't wait to get to work. Roll Diggs," tweeted the left-handed senior who helped the Polson Pirates reach the state A semifinals the last 2 seasons. So, in Wilson, Tech is getting one of the most prolific QBs in Class A history. He's the only Polson Pirate to pass for 500 yards in a game, did it twice, and separately 400 yards in a game when he did 7 times. His 13 career 300-yard passing games are tied for first, according to Class A historian Brian A. Reed. So, just a special season altogether for Wilson. Awesome to see him keep that football journey alive. Can't do anything but root for the kid, and hopefully we get to see him on the field sooner than later. I know Montana Tech has a solid quarterback coming off a good year, but that's the beauty of college sports. It only takes a couple seasons. Wilson could get his shot, stay ready, keep preparing, and next thing you know, the time comes, doors open, seize the moment. All right, so congrats to him on the commitment. Next up, let's jump from the gridiron to the diamond. Whitefish baseball and football star Ty Schwaiger committed to Washington State University to play baseball for the Cougars. Schwaiger is planning on pitching for the Cougars. According to an article from the Whitefish Pilot, he plans on playing baseball for Whitefish this year as well in the inaugural season of Montana State High School baseball, with goals of bringing a state title home to Whitefish in the first ever season. So awesome stuff from Schwaiger. Thank you to our friends at the Whitefish Pilot for covering that, putting out the article. Awesome to see the two-sport athlete who's a great football player. Had the opportunity to watch him a couple times with Whitefish, and hey, great pitcher. He's going to have the opportunity to go up against the top-tier talent out in the Pac-12, so good luck to Schwaiger. We're excited to see his baseball journey continue. And hey, maybe he, gets his dream and brings Whitefish that state title. There's going to be a lot of teams, I'm sure, hungry for that first ever one, but he's going to have a chance. Let's get to another piece of recruiting news related to a Whitefish athlete. This story is also from the Whitefish Pilot. Whitefish senior golfer Billy Smith signed his letter of intent to continue his golf journey at UNLV, aka the University of Las Vegas, Nevada. Smith credited the UNLV coaches for his decision and the facility that they offer for the golf team. Smith had a decorated prep golf career in Montana after moving to the state from Texas after his freshman year, and he helped lead the team to a state tournament Class A title in 2020. Best of luck to Smith, and hey, make sure to stay hydrated out in that Vegas heat. Definitely turns it up a little bit out there with the temperatures. All right. Thanks again to our friends at the Whitefish Pilot for their coverage on the local scene with the sports scene. Last up, sticking with the golf scene, Glacier High golf star Tyler Avery signed his letter of intent to continue swinging the clubs for the Montana Tech Ore Diggers. Avery was a 4-time All-State golfer and runner-up at the Class AA state tournament this fall. Congrats to Avery, and congrats to all the rest of our local athletes on their accomplishments and commitments to keep their athletic journeys going at the next level. It's awesome stuff. Exciting to see where it takes them. And overall, I said this before about the fall sports athletes, but credit to them for balancing the books and the challenges that come with that, because it's not easy putting the time and effort it takes to be a top, a college-level athlete, well, putting the level of the academic requirements involved. So kudos to them. Major props. One other recruiting note, just real quick to mention, a little bit outside of the valley, but here we go, a little bit outside the local area, but close enough. Quarterback Patrick Duchian of Florence Carleton committed to Montana State after leading Florence to back-to-back Class B state titles. He was also named Football Player of the Year for the state of Montana by MaxPreps.com, one of the leading prep sports websites out there, prep sports coverage is out there. So safe to say he's going to be an exciting player at the next level, and we're excited to see his journey with the Bobcats. So before we move along to our prep players of the week, that was kind of the end of our headlines, prep roundup all mixed into one. A lot of action with local players continuing their journey. Had to give them their credit. Had to keep you guys updated where they're going. So before we move along to our prep players of the week and that cat Griz talk, here's a message from the team at Nomad. At Nomad, The key to our success has always been the amazing talent and experience of our team. Based in one of the most beautiful places on earth, our Kalispell, Montana headquarters is home to some of the most skilled engineers, integrators, software developers, welders, electricians, carpenters, mechanics, and professional staff in the market. Our team is dedicated to working collaboratively with our valued clients to ensure success in every mission. Join our team. Check our careers page at nomadgcs.com/careers. That's nomadgcs.com/careers to view current job openings and to submit an application. Remember, nomadgcs.com/careers. Go check that out. And remember, as always, all these good prep updates we've been giving you can check on the dailyinterlake.com or pick up a couple of the last week's editions of the Interlake. All right, let's move to those prep players of the week, presented by Fargodome Media Group Montana. Here's a quick word from the team. The team in Montana is here to help you grow. Our skilled team will assess your marketing goals and craft ROI-focused campaigns honed to meet your business needs. Our integrated marketing solutions will help your people find you wherever they are looking, whether it's Google, YouTube, apps, or your local newspaper. Contact Anton at 406-758-4410 for more information. That's 406-758-4410 for more information. Let's dive into those prep players of the week presented by Fargodome Media Group Montana. Starting out, 6 Big Fork Vikings made the All-State Class B football team across the state, voted by the Montana Coaches Association. Very impressive. 36 players were honored in total. Big Fork had the most selections in the state. Running back Joseph Ferrier ran for 874 yards, 16 touchdowns, and was among the Vikings' picks. So was linebacker/guard Manny Baldy, receivers Isaac Epperly and Nick Walker, H-back Bryce Gilliard, and quarterback Tristan Hurd. Epperly caught 31 passes for 427 yards and 7 total touchdowns, all team highs. Walker and Gilliard each averaged over 20 yards of reception and combined for 5 receiving touchdowns. Gilliard is an all-state for a second straight year. Hurd threw for 1,528 yards and 21 touchdowns with 6 interceptions. He's the lone junior among the Vikings honorees. The rest are seniors. So again, kudos to those Big Fork athletes. Their football team was a lot of fun to watch this year. I had the opportunity to cover their playoff action in the snow. Good times. Just they played such a gritty, fun to watch, old school football, and it's great to see those kids get their credit they deserve on the All-State team. So big credit to them representing the local area well, and credit on their success. Next up on our prep players of the week, we got some volleyball action here. Some postseason awards racked up by our local athletes, highlighted by Glacier senior libero Maddie Frazier, who made the second team All-State for Class AA. Very impressive. Flathead had Sion Mooney and Sienna Sturk named first team All-Western AA. Meanwhile, Frazier, Ella Farrell, and Sarah Downs were first team Western AA for Glacier. Frazier averaged 3.92 digs a set for the Wolfpack. That was 3.92 digs a set for the Wolfpack, just to clarify. Farrell was among the Western AA leaders in blocks and kills. Downs was a 4th in the conference in kills, 2.52 a set, and averaged 3 digs a set as well. While Mooney averaged 3 digs a set and was among 4 Bravettes in the top 6 in the conference for aces. Sturk led the conference in aces and was 2nd in kills with 2.92 a set. Big credit to all those volleyball athletes from the crosstown schools, kind of lumping them together there. I know usually they're going at it toe-to-toe, but we'll take this little bit of time to highlight the athletes from both schools in our Kalispell area here and give them the credit they deserve. So, hey, those were your prep players of the week presented by Fargodome Media Group Montana. The team in Montana is here to help you grow. Our skilled team will assess your marketing goals and craft ROI-focused campaigns honed to meet your business needs. Our integrated marketing solutions will help you and will help your people find you wherever they are looking, whether it's Google, YouTube, apps, or your local newspaper. Contact Anton at 406-758-4410 for more information. All right, been jamming through this show, pure action-packed. Shout out Nomad. Shout out Fargodome Media Group Montana for fueling the action. Shout out our prep players of the week and everybody we mentioned making those commitments earlier, as well as our Frontier Conference nods from the local area. But let's get to that Cat Griz time. It's playoff action in the football scene. The Griz are coming off what you could easily call a historic comeback. So there's a lot to get to. Might be a little excited to talk some Cat and Griz today. I might have been pumped up, you could say. So let's start this out. I'm going to go through some game notes from the Griz playoff matchup with SEMO, and then we'll move into one thing to watch for the Griz and Cats moving forward into their next playoff game, and some thoughts on the Bobcats matchup with Weber State on the horizon. So let's start out with our stat of the week that pretty much explains this game in a nutshell, this Griz game. Here's our stat of the day, stat of the week, just to paint the picture. The Griz trailed SEMO 24-3 early in the third quarter and would go on to win the game 34-24 after pitching a second half shutout and scoring 31 unanswered points in the second half to seal the playoff victory and pull off a comeback for the ages. So this was just one of those epic games. You could kind of feel the tension early. It wasn't really going the Griz way. The home crowd was feeling a little bit out of it. I'm not going to lie. I might have sent out a tweet even that said the Griz need to score on special teams or defense. And then what do you know? They did just that. They got 2 second-half touchdowns in the return games to make things interesting. Malik Flowers brought Washington Grizzly Stadium back to life with an electric kick return that just brought the house down and tied that FCS record that we mentioned earlier for most kick returns in a game. All of a sudden, it's 24-10. Lucas Johnson then hits Keelan White for a touchdown strike. It's a one-score game just like that. The Griz defense gets another stop, and what happens? Suddenly, Junior Bergen takes the ensuing punt 58 yards to the house. Grizzlies crowd is ignited. The team's going nuts, and all of a sudden, it's a tied ball game, and momentum is 100% on the side of Montana. From there, the Griz put it away with an interception by Garrett Graves. Nico Ramos had a field goal, and then Johnson hit Cole Grossman as well for a touchdown that pretty much sealed the playoff win for the ages for the Griz to keep this season alive. It's been a pure roller coaster season, so it's kind of only fitting. You go down 24-0, and then all of a sudden, what happens? 24-3, and then all of a sudden, what happens? You win the game. So here's my analysis. The Griz, they played arguably the worst 6 quarters of football of their entire season. They played Montana State, and it was ugly. SEMO in the first half dominated the Griz. It was ugly. That's 6 straight quarters of just bad football from Montana. The season was over. You thought it was done, and next thing you know, they found life, and they went on a run. They scored the unanswered points. They do their thing. I mean, they were getting dominated. They were outscored 72-24 over those 6 quarters. And like I said, all of a sudden, they come back to life. They score the 31 unanswered points, even that scoring margin a little bit over those 2 contests, and keep their season alive, most importantly. So here's to continue my analysis a little bit. Montana's run game was almost non-existent. Isaiah Childs, towards the end, he got it going a bit. We'll see if they kind of keep working him into the offense a little more early into the game. I did like his performance late. It seemed like he did a good job of finding the hole and kind of moving the chains for the Griz, keeping the ball moving, keeping the clock moving when they were trying to wind things down at the end. So I was impressed with his play. But overall, it felt like they had no confidence early on in the rushing attack. That does worry me with the matchup versus the North Dakota State Bison on the horizon. Can you play a one-dimensional style? We'll get into that in a few. So the thing about the Griz offense, when it's clicking, it's really clicking. They hit those home runs. Lucas Johnson finds a guy deep. He makes a couple of great plays with his legs, gets out of the pocket, makes a great throw. All of a sudden, they look like geniuses. The coordinator looks great. They're hitting home runs. The problem is when they're not hitting those home runs and they're having trouble getting the singles and they can't really get things going and they're facing 3rd and 9 after 3rd and 9, that's going to be something to watch. Overall, though, they did get it going and they found that stride. And in football, one of the most important things, if you really pay attention in the playoffs and that kind of thing, momentum is huge. And the Griz just went from momentum being non-existent for them to being all on their side. Their offense was clicking. It looked like the team we saw earlier this year blow out Cal Poly, blow out Eastern Washington, dominate teams early in the season. So with momentum on their side, can they keep that going versus a North Dakota State Bison team who's an FCS powerhouse? They're the defending national champs. It's going to be tough. They love to run the football. The one thing the Griz cannot do, and I said this the same thing with the Montana State game, they can't get behind early because that totally changes the dynamic of the game. And a team like the Bison will just keep running the ball, and they'll have no problem doing so. They'll run the clock out, and they'll win the game 17-3, and they won't care. So I think the Griz, you got to try to keep this momentum going. Here's my one big question for the Griz to dive into it. I did want to say, let's see if I can find the stat here about Lucas Johnson. It looks like I'm struggling here. I did want to mention, though, he struggled. He had his ups and downs, but he finished the game with 300 yards, and he made enough plays to get the win. A lot of criticism out there about him, but hey, he got the win. He did what he needed to do, stayed in it, kept his head above water, got the W. So my one question for the Griz, and then we'll get into the Cats and Weber State stuff, is can the Griz offense find a way to keep the Bison defense off balance? Will the Griz be able to hit those home runs to put pressure on the Bison? Because the Bison love to run the football. So if the Griz can somehow jump out to like a 10-0 lead, their offense was just rolling. Malik Flowers maybe does it again, starts the game out with a return touchdown, whatever it be, not to get too hypothetical. The Griz need to get a great start. My big question is going to be, can they find consistent ways to move the chains? Can they find consistent ways to run their offense where it doesn't look like they're just relying on the big play? Because that's been the problem, and in my opinion, SEMO was a tough opponent. The Bison are a different level. So if the Bison, you're not going to go rely on the home run. You're not going to get down 24-3 and make a comeback. So the Griz, how do you find those consistent ways to take care of the football, run the offense efficiently, and get out to a lead or keep it close? It could be 10-7. They got to just keep it a ball game. You can't let the Bison run away with this one, or they'll literally just run away with it. So on to the Bobcats. I'm excited for that game. We might get into a little more Griz/Bobcats playoff preview later in the week. We'll see how things go, but that's going to be a fun one. On to the Bobcats. We'll start with the biggest question and then just some overall notes from their last game versus Weber State and outlook for this one. Biggest question for the Bobcats. Their run game in their last performance versus the Griz was dominant. And what did they do against Weber State earlier this year? Dominated them on the ground. Tommy Malott had a huge game rushing in that one. He rushed for 273 yards and 3 touchdowns versus Weber State. So my question is, it's kind of similar to the Griz, but I guess it's opposite of the home run in the passing game. Can the Bobcats, similar to the Griz with their issues running the football, here's the other way around. If the Bobcats don't throw the football and they go out there and they say, we're going to run our offense just like we have, where we just continue to run the football down teams' throats and we don't really care about keeping teams off balance, where we believe in our offensive line, we believe in our blocking schemes, and we know what we can do, can that work versus Weber State a second time? That's my biggest question, because now there's film against the Griz where clearly the Bobcats ran the ball 60-plus times. Weber State can get a little bit of an idea of their scheme. They played them earlier this year, and the Bobcats, they only won that game by 5. And we mentioned this previously on the show a couple months ago. The only reason the Bobcats got very, very lucky to have Weber State let up 8 points on safeties. Weber State snapped 4 balls over their punter's head. That was an FCS record. That's not going to happen again. So it was a close game already. Weber State has a great idea of what the Bobcats do. Can Brett Vegan and that Bobcats coaching staff do just enough to keep them off balance, throw a couple wrinkles in, throw the ball just a little bit more, get Tommy Malott going in the passing game just a little bit more, because I think that's what it's going to take. That's my big question. Now, that being said, I do expect the Bobcats to win this one. I think that they can do enough to keep teams on their toes and get creative. They have Sean Chambers in this one. They did not have him in the previous matchup versus Weber State. He's been one of the best players in the FCS all year. He's your backup QB. That's a good sign. I think that they're going to be fine. I think they're going to use those wrinkles like we saw against the Griz from the Bobcats when they're rolling Tommy Malott out on the end at receiver, bringing him on the end around. When you start throwing those kind of things out there, it doesn't matter how much film you watch, because there's always going to be another potential option there. Malott could throw the ball. He could pitch it back to Chambers. There's just too many question marks. I think the Bobcats will be fine ultimately. But when you're playing a team for the second time in the season, with a lot of film out there at this point in the season in the playoffs, it's definitely something to consider. A playoff matchup versus a conference foe. I mean, you guys are going to know each other's games. So that would be my big thing. We're just going to kind of see how the Bobcats can keep Weber State on their toes. And then, the Wildcats also have a very effective rushing attack. And they kind of were hurt when they played the Bobcats earlier because they couldn't run the ball as much, because they had 4 safeties go against them, meaning the Bobcats had the ball in the majority of the game. So it's tough to run the ball when you basically have 20 minutes of possession. I looked at the stats. It was like 22 minutes. So the Bobcats had the good fortune of dominating time of possession in the previous matchup. Can they recreate that without those safeties? How do they do that? We'll see what Malott does, see if he can work his magic again, just like he did against the Griz. So, I'm confident they can pull off a win. I just know this is going to be a tough matchup, and there's definitely some question marks. So we'll see what happens. It's going to be a fun one. That'll actually do it for today's show. Before we wrap this thing up, I want to give a special thanks to Fargodome Media Group Montana for their support. And, of course, remind everyone listening that this episode was brought to you by Nomad, the Flathead's best manufacturer. Nomad is a longtime supporter of the local community and sports scene, celebrating 20 years of building great careers and mission-focused custom vehicles. Nomad, a Montana-based company making a global impact. Nomad has worked with NASA and various branches of the United States military, so Nomad is a name you can trust with your manufacturing needs. For more info, visit nomadgcs.com. That's nomadgcs.com for more information. All right, that'll do it. Thanks again to the Flathead's best manufacturer, Nomad. Thanks again to Fargodome Media Group Montana. I'm wiped out, everyone. That Griz game still has me going. My adrenaline's still pumping. That was one of the craziest games. You'll see. That was a fun one. Absolute mayhem. I'm excited for this Bobcats matchup on the horizon. Thanks again to all those fall sport athletes we mentioned earlier for all their hard work in and out of the classroom, on the field. Whether it was the people making commitments, the athletes making their commitments, or our prep players of the week. So big credit to all of them. Next week, of course, we're going to dive back into the Griz playoff action, the Bobcats playoff action, see how both teams fared. Is there still going to be a chance after next week of a Montana versus Montana State FCS championship game? Hey, we're holding out for just that little bit of hope. And of course, we're going to start talking a little bit of winter prep sports because it is that time. So thank you to everybody for tuning in. It is always much appreciated. Jam-packed show. Feel like we flew through it, but hey, had to get to that Grizzcat stuff. It's that time of year. 'Tis the season, as they say, playoff time. So everyone, you have a good one. Thanks as always for listening. I'm Josh Dugan, and I'm out. Thank you. Have a good one.